Views and opinions expressed throughout the broadcast day are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of the station, its staff, or underwriter. Thanks for joining us this morning. Heroes and Patriots.
Oh, you're slick. You investors in hate. You Saddams and you Bushes. You Bin Ladens and snakes. You billionaire bullies.
Welcome to Heroes and Patriots, a program about national security, intelligence, and foreign policy. Today is Thursday, March 6, 2025, and we are streaming live from the studios of KMUD Community Radio in Northern California. Good morning, I'm Mary Massey, and joined by co-host John SAKOWICZ. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Mary, and good morning to our audience here in Northern California listening to the live broadcast, and also to our national audience, excuse me, listening to the web stream, and our audience abroad and listening to outlets like Al Jazeera. Just a quick housekeeping note. Today is Protect My Public Media Day, and as Dorothy mentioned, folded into that is our membership drive. So please support public media, which here in Northern California includes KZYX, KZYZ, as well as KMUD.
Right.
Support all our stations. We bring you the best public radio possible here at KMUD. We're the little engine that could. We were featured in a Netflix documentary, Murder Mountain, and we really bring you great programming with a great staff. I also want to thank our guest, which Mary will introduce in a second, Ben Cohen, one of the two co-founders of Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream. Before we get to what Ben is up to these days, I want to thank Ben and Ben & Jerry's, and I want to do it from the bottom of my heart. And it brings me tears to think about it. The AIDS epidemic is very close to me for very personal reasons. I won't get into it. But I took a hiatus from Wall Street, where I was a national sales manager at Dean Witter, to work for $30,000 a year at AIDS Project Worcester in Worcester, Massachusetts. And one of the things I did was start a food bank for our clients. Almost all of our clients were indigent men or people with IV drug habits who were in recovery. A lot of them were women and children. The women were also in recovery and HIV positive. And I started a food bank for our clients. And in the food bank was a freezer, and it was always stocked with Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Ben & Jerry's would make donations of free ice cream to every AIDS service agency in New England.
How about that?
It just moves me to my core to meet the guy that made that possible. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, John. Well, as Dorothy said, our program today and always is archived at the station at kmud.org, on our YouTube and Facebook pages, and our program website, heroespatriots.org. And we always offer the chance for listeners to call in with a brief question on topic to speak with our guests. That number, 707-923-3911. And we do ask that you be brief and be on topic. So we're going to start right off discussing this past Tuesday's President Trump's delivered the State of the Union to Congress. And one of the areas he is most proud of is the work undertaken by Elon Musk and DOGE, also known as Department of Government Efficiency. As John mentioned, we are pleased to welcome Ben Cohen, co-founder of Ben & Jerry's and the co-founder of Eisenhower Media Network, a group of retired military officers who support a less militaristic, multipolar world order. Excuse me. I haven't had my coffee, Ben.
You drink a Diet Coke.
I know, I'm drinking Diet Coke, but it's not kicking in yet. So, first of all, let's bring you into the program. Welcome, Ben Cohen, for the first time to Heroes and Patriots.
Hello, good to be here on KMUD.
Yeah. I don't know if you've been in Northern California, but it's a beautiful place, and we broadcast out of the area. So, as I mentioned, Trump's State of the Union was this past Tuesday. I don't know if you had a chance to view it, but I wondered if you had a moment to just reflect in general as to what he was offering Congress and us.
Well, we've mostly been following what he's been saying about nuclear weapons and the Pentagon budget. We've been active in calling attention to, letting Elon and Dodge know that if they're looking to cut government waste, USAID, the Department of Education,
Right.
those are the little crumbs in terms of the discretionary budget. 50% of it is the Pentagon. If you look at the budget pie, everything else is a little sliver, and if you're really looking for waste, the Pentagon is the place to go. And so, Trump made comments about reducing the Pentagon budget by 50%. He made comments about denuclearizing.
Mm-hmm.
So far, I think in terms of what Doge has been doing around the Pentagon budget, it hasn't been making any progress at all in terms of reducing it.
Well, before we get too far into this, we think we have something from the past that might support where you're headed. And Dorothy, if you are ready to queue up, we are playing a short clip, an audio clip of Donald Rumsfeld. And it's from September 10th, 2001, one day before 9/11. And he's speaking to the members of the Department of Defense and the Pentagon and so forth. So we're going to play that. You can see the full 11-minute video on our Facebook page. But for now, we're going to listen to that, and then we'll kick off our topic.
We're going to dive right in. And again, this happened the day before 9/11. Donald Rumsfeld, who was a neocon and a war hawk, is speaking to the press, CBS News, Vince Gonzalez on C-SPAN as well, about waste, fraud, and corruption at the Department of Defense, where he alleged that one out of every $4, some $2.1 trillion cumulative, was unaccounted for at the Pentagon. It's shocking. The allegation was shocking. He held up an audit where he was looking for a little piece of that, $300 million, and he had the auditor standing right next to him. Guess what? The very next day, the Twin Towers came down, and nothing was ever heard about waste, fraud, and corruption in the Pentagon again. Dorothy, roll it.
Sorry, I forgot to prepare it, and I don't know where you sent it. Oops.
It's in your email.
It's in the email?
In which one? Ooh, sorry.
Okay.
Well, this is live radio.
Dorothy will
sorry.
find
I forgot.
Ben, are you familiar with this interview that Rumsfeld gave?
It's about 24 years old, and
it's shocking.
Well, I'm certainly familiar with, I think, Rumsfeld talking about how the Pentagon can't be audited, and then there were all these promises that, oh yeah, we're gonna have it pass an audit, and they hire all these public accountant firms, pay them hundreds of millions of dollars, and they never produce an auditable statement.
One of the other interesting comments that he makes to the audience back then is that, he was a director, and he said there were 17 layers from an idea from one of his online people to get to him. He said, why do we need 17 layers to get an idea to me? 17 different walls, if you will, and that they couldn't even communicate to one another within their own building because the technology, the infrastructure just wasn't there. So we wanted to play that to have you listen to it and have our audience understand that 24 years ago, they just started looking at this, and, here we are now.
And once the war on terror started on 9/11, not a single peep was heard about waste, fraud, and corruption at the Pentagon again.
And it was just shoveling more and more money at the Pentagon.
Right.
despite the fact that it had nothing to do with 9/11 or terrorism. I mean, they were just funding obsolete Cold War weapon systems.
Exactly. So tell us about your initiative, Doge versus the Blob.
Well, that was designed as an online project to focus on the tech bros that are in constant communication with Elon, to communicate to Elon that, you know, the major source of government waste is the Pentagon. So it's a contest to develop memes that are aimed at Elon to indicate the different ridiculous amounts of waste in the Pentagon budget. You can enter the contest. You get to win Doge coins, and you know, that I guess you could say that it was successful and that they've started talking about it, but they're not really at this point yet doing anything about it. You know, one of the major examples that is on that site is the ridiculous amount of overkill in terms of our nuclear arsenal.
Right.
One nuclear bomb did a lot of damage, and now the Pentagon has this philosophy that, well, you know, if one weapon is good, more weapons are even better. So they now have a nuclear arsenal which is the equivalent of 50,000 Hiroshima-sized bombs. And they're planning on building another $2 trillion worth and escalating the nuclear arms race. It's absurd.
But isn't that more of a policy issue than a waste, fraud, and corruption issue? And is your site making that distinction?
It is definitely a policy issue, which leads to a whole lot of waste, and which is which you know I'm thinking of this quote from Peter Drucker, who was, you know, a management guru, who said that there's nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should never have been done at all. So, you know, is it waste, fraud, and abuse and corruption? There's no doubt in my mind. I don't think there's much doubt in anybody's mind that the Pentagon budget is driven by corruption. It's a corrupt system whereby there's a revolving door, whereby the generals that are supposedly supervising the weapons manufacturers then retire and become employed by the weapons manufacturers. And then the weapons manufacturers leave private industry and become part of the Pentagon. So that's corrupt. And, you know, and the political donations and lobbying, that's corrupt. So
yeah, it's a revolving door between retiring generals and admirals and the defense industry. And as Eisenhower warned of a military-industrial complex, it's a business and big business. In fact, in my show in the past, I had Bob Gates on my show, former Secretary of Defense and CIA director, who was promoting his book. And I'll never forget the quote: "War is a business and business is good." Quote unquote. War is a business and business is good. So you can say anything about war that you want, either the politics of war, the ideology of war. When the day is done, the world's elite are making money on both sides of a war issue. You know, here in the United States during World War II, we had the Rockefellers and Henry Ford supporting the Nazis. You know, so the super rich hedge their bets by betting on both sides in a war. War is a business, plain and simple.
Absolutely. That's definitely what's driven it. If you took the profit out of war, we wouldn't be building these huge Pentagon budgets. We wouldn't be at war. I mean, a lot of times I feel like the problem for those of us that are trying to resist it is that there's no profits in anti-militarism. There's no financial profits. I mean, there's a tremendous gain for the people of our country and the people of the world, but that's the problem.
So on top of those profit margins, and again, I don't know what the profit margins are like in the ice cream business, but I know in the grocery business they're minuscule. They're like 1 or 2%, if that. These are grocery stores like Whole Foods or Safeway, or what have you. In the Pentagon, I've heard that profit margins can be up to 50%, markups of what defense contractors are charging the American taxpayer. And on top of that, we have 1 out of every $4 that are just disappearing. Dorothy, do we have that tape? All right, we're going to run that tape, Ben.
Okay, it's just a little over 2 minutes.
Poses a threat, serious threat to the security of the United States of America. This adversary is one of the world's last bastions of central planning, governs by dictating 5-year plans, a single capital it attempts to impose its command across time zones, continents, oceans, and beyond. With brutal consistency, it stifles free thought and crushes new ideas. Disrupts the defense of the United States and places the lives of men and women in uniform at risk. Perhaps this adversary sounds like the former Soviet Union, but that enemy's gone. Our foes are more subtle and implacable today. You may think I'm describing one of the last decrepit dictators of the world, but their day too is almost past, and they cannot match the strength or size of this adversary. The adversary is closer to home. It's the Pentagon bureaucracy. Not the people, but the processes. Not the civilians, but the systems. Not the men and women in uniform, but the uniformity of thought and action that we too often impose on them. In this building, despite the era of scarce resources, taxed by mounting threats, money disappears into duplicative duties, bloated bureaucracy, not because of greed, but gridlock. Innovation is stifled not by ill intent, but by institutional inertia. Just as we must transform America's military capability to meet changing threats, we must transform the way the department works and what it works on. We must build a department where each of the dedicated people here can apply their immense talents to defend America, where they have the resources, information, and freedom to perform. Our challenge is to transform not just the way we deter and defend, but the way we conduct our daily business. Let's make no mistake. The modernization of the Department of Defense is a matter of some urgency. In fact, it could be said that it's a matter of life and death, ultimately, every American's. A new idea ignored may be the next threat overlooked. A person employed in a redundant task is one who could be countering terrorism or nuclear proliferation. Every dollar squandered on waste is one denied to the warfighter. That's why we're here today, challenging us all to wage an all-out campaign to shift Pentagon's resources from bureaucracy to the battlefield, from tail to the tooth. We know the adversary, we know the threat, and with the same firmness of purpose that any effort against a determined adversary demands, we must get at it and stay at it. Some might ask, how in the world could the Secretary of Defense attack the Pentagon in front of its people? To them I reply, I have no desire to attack the Pentagon. I want to liberate it. We need to save it from itself. The men and women of this department, civilians and militaries, are our allies, not our enemies. They too are fed up with bureaucracy. They too live with frustrations. I hear it every day. And I'll bet $1 to a dime that they too want to fix it. In fact, I bet they even know how to fix it. And if asked, we'll get about the task of fixing it. And I'm asking, They know the taxpayers deserve better. Every dollar we spend was entrusted to us by a taxpayer who earned it by creating something of value with sweat and skill. A cashier in Chicago, a waitress in San Francisco. An average American family works an entire year to generate $6,000 in income taxes. Here we spill many times that amount every hour by duplication and by inattention. That's wrong. It's wrong because national defense depends on public trust, and trust in turn hinges on respect for the hardworking people of America and the tax dollars they earn. We need to respect them and their efforts. Waste drains resources from training and tanks, from infrastructure and intelligence, from helicopters and housing. Outdated systems crush ideas that could save a life. Redundant processes prevent us from adapting to evolving threats with the speed and agility that today's world demands. Above all, the shift from bureaucracy to the battlefield is a matter of national security. In this period of limited funds, we need every nickel, every good idea, every innovation, every effort to help modernize and transform the U.S. military. We must change for a simple reason. The world has, and we have not yet changed sufficiently. The clearest and most important transformation is from a bipolar Cold War world where threats were visible and predictable to one in which they arise from multiple sources, most of which are difficult to anticipate, and many of which are impossible even to know today. Let there be no question. The 2.7 million people who wear our country's uniform, active, guard, and reserve, and the close to 700,000 more who support them in civilian attire, comprise the finest military in the history of the world. They stand ready to face down any threat, anytime, anywhere. But we must do more. We must develop and build weapons to deter those new threats. We must rebuild our infrastructure, which is in a very serious state of disrepair. And we must assure that the noble cause of military service remains the high calling that will attract the very best. All this costs money. It costs more than we have. It demands agility, more than today's bureaucracy allows. And that means we must recognize another transformation, the revolution in management, technology, and business practices. Successful modern businesses are leaner and less hierarchical than ever before. They reward innovation and they share information. They have to be nimble in the face of rapid change or they die. Business enterprises die if they fail to adapt. And the fact that they can fail and die is what provides the incentive to survive. But governments can't die. So we need to find other incentives for bureaucracy to adapt and improve. The technology revolution has transformed organizations across the private sector. But not ours, not fully, not yet. We are, as they say, tangled in our anchor chain. Our financial systems are decades old. According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions. We cannot share information from floor to floor in this building because it's stored on dozens of different technological systems that are inaccessible or incompatible. We maintain 20 to 25% more base infrastructure than we need to support our forces, at an annual waste to taxpayers of some $3 to $4 billion. Fully half of our resources go to infrastructure and overhead. And in addition to draining resources from warfighting, these costly and outdated systems, procedures, and programs stifle innovation as well. A new idea must often survive the gauntlet of some 17 levels of bureaucracy to make it from a line officer's head to my desk. I have too much respect for a line officer to believe that we need 17 layers between us. Our business process and regulation seems to be engineered to prevent any mistake. And by so doing, they discourage any risk. But ours is a nation born of ideas and raised on improbability. And risk aversion is not America's ethic. And more important, it must not be ours. Those who fear danger do not volunteer to storm beaches and take hills, sail the seas, and conquer the skies. Now we must free you to take some of the same thoughtful, reasoned risks in the bureaucracy that the men and women in uniform do in battle. To that end, we're announcing...
Wow, Ben, what do you think?
Same old, same old. There's been absolutely no improvement. It's gotten worse. There's really no incentive to improve it. I talk to Pentagon whistleblowers, people that have been focused on this issue from the inside for most of their lives. And what they say is that once you understand what the purpose of the Pentagon is, everything they do makes sense. And that the purpose of the Pentagon is to keep the money flowing, to keep the spigot open, to maximize the amount of money that comes into the Pentagon. And, threat inflation, sometimes actually they've referred to the Pentagon as a self-licking ice cream cone. That they developed the intelligence that says that, oh my God, there's this incredible threat out there. Now there's that other threat out there. Now there's this other one. And we can build the weapons that are necessary to counter that threat. And it's I don't know. I mean, it's a theft. I mean, as Eisenhower said, it's a theft from people that don't have their basic human needs met. I mean, the amount of money that is going into the Pentagon is inconceivable.
Right.
It's $1 trillion a year.
Right.
That is what? 1,000 billion? I mean, you just can't conceive of it. I actually, one of the reasons I got into this whole issue is that I began to have a vague understanding of how much a billion actually is. Ben and Jerry's got up to a level before it got sold of about $300 million.
Right.
And then I understood 3 times that's $1 billion. And man, it is a shitload of money. I mean, it's a shitload of ice cream. I mean, it's unfathomable. And, just to give you another idea, if you counted every second you were alive, you would be 33 years old before you lived 1 billion seconds. So, inside the Pentagon, $1 billion is chicken feed. It doesn't buy anything. But you move it outside the Pentagon into education or healthcare or helping people buy a house, and it solves any problem that you can think of.
$1 trillion a year, and most of our $36 trillion national debt can be attributed, or at least half of it, to defense spending. By the way, a self-licking ice cream cone. You had to work an ice cream metaphor into the show, didn't you?
They told me. I don't know.
So I like it. So again, I want to remind our audience that this is Donald Rumsfeld speaking. Old hippies like myself and Ben and Bernie Sanders, don't really cuddle up to or Donald Rumsfeld. He was a war hawk and a neocon. But this is a neohawk. This is a war hawk and a neocon talking about the problem. So if they're talking about it, if a guy like Bob Gates, another neocon and war hawk, are talking about war as a business, buddy, step aside. You're going to get steamrolled in this business. If you have guys like Bob Gates and Donald Rumsfeld saying it, believe them. So back to your website. Where can we find your website? How do you enter this contest for a one of these Dogecoins?
The website is Doge versus blob.org, I think.
Yep.
And that's blob.org. Blob.
Right. Blob being the military-industrial complex. Yeah, come on along. It's kind of a fun-looking website. It's a nice place to be, and you could win, a bunch of Dogecoin. I don't know what the heck you do with Dogecoin, but
Well,
you could be the happy owner of it.
So you could win $1,000 a day, correct? You give
1,000 Dogecoin. I don't know what that's worth.
Right. I looked it up. It's worth $238.
All right.
And a grand prize is what, 10,000 Dogecoins?
That's right.
Right. And the coin itself is the first cryptocurrency that's a meme, right? Is that correct?
You are way more advanced at that.
Well, it's their site, brother.
Oh, hey Ben, before we have to say goodbye, I wondered what you'll be watching as Trump's presidency, spreads out in these first 100 days, and Doge in particular. What are you hoping for? What are you looking for? What do you think what do you project might happen?
Well, I'm hoping to snatch victory out of the jaws of defeat, and I'm hoping that Trump is serious about reducing nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping for an end to the killing in Ukraine. I'm
Right.
really, I'm pissed off that apparently the genocide in Israel is gonna continue. But I mean, I think he needs to make good on his talk about cutting the Pentagon budget in half.
Right.
We don't need to be attempting to control the entire world. I mean, we have 800 military bases all over the world that shouldn't be there. I mean, our military ought to be about defending the geography of the United States instead
Correct.
of trying to tell everybody else what to do.
Ben, I know that you've taken a strong stance against Israel's IDF forces committing war crimes in Palestine. And I wonder if you would say a word about that, because I respect your stand, your very courageous stand on that issue as well. You may be interested to know that the guests following you this show, Seth Donnelly, organized a class action lawsuit against our congressman here in the 1st Congressional District, Jared Huffman, for giving Israel just unrestricted military aid, including money for cluster bombs, phosphorus bombs, and other weapons of mass destruction. And we have over 1,000 constituents, Mary and myself included, who have sued our congressman. And this is, I think, the first or second time in the history of our country that the constituents have sued a member of Congress. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about some of the work you've done in Israel?
Well, I think it's beautiful that you guys have started that suit. Thank you very much. Way before October 7th and the current hostilities, Ben and Jerry's made a decision to pull out of the West Bank because we were opposed to Israel's policies and their treatment of Palestinians there. So that's what we've been doing on the issue.
Yeah, no, it's great, and we respect you for that, and we respect the long history and the legacy that Ben and Jerry's Ice Cream has had on social issues. Once again, your website is Doge versus Blob, DOGE versus BLOB.org.
That is Blob.
That is Blob, and they're awarding 1,000 Dogecoins a day and 10,000 grand prize for the best ideas to cut waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption out of the Pentagon. How many responses have you seen so far? Are you happy with the responses?
They look great to me. I've seen a lot of the memes. I don't have the numbers, but so far so good.
And what are you doing with these ideas?
We're spreading them around on the internet, and mostly we're trying to get Elon to see them.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mentioned at the top of the show that you are a co-founder of the Eisenhower Media Network, and we really didn't get to ask you about that, but could you just briefly let us know what that is, and are you using that media to promote your effort now?
Well, EMN is a group of retired military officers, from admirals, generals, Larry Wilkerson, the former chief of staff to Colin Powell,
Right.
and a whole bunch of other ones. And we use their voice to legitimize the points we're making about ending endless wars, reducing the absurd Pentagon budget.
Wow.
Very
Great.
good.
Very good. Well,
Well, before we let you go, again, I want you to give a plug to public radio since this is NPR and PBS have organized this. This is Protect Your Public Media Day. I'm sure you love public media in Vermont where you live. Just a quick shout out to stations like KMUD, like ours, or KZYX, our sister station, and public radio and public TV in Vermont. Why does it need to be saved?
Public radio, public TV, they rock. It's the voice of the people, and we need to keep it going.
Ben Cohen, we thank you for being with us this first time and talking about your efforts to reduce waste, fraud in government. We hope you'll come back and let us know how your contest ends up, and maybe talk a little bit more about some of your ideas around your media group and so forth. All
righty. Good being with you guys.
Yeah, Ben, and I want you to know, again, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for all that your company has done in humanitarian efforts, from my perspective, for aid service agencies across New England. I want you to know that you have a personal invitation from me to visit us here in Redwood Country. I'll put you up at the Vichy Hot Springs. I'd be happy to do that. It would be such an honor to meet you, my friend.
All right. Well, thanks very much. Thanks for the show. Take care.
It is 33 minutes past the hour. If you're just tuning in to KMUD, this is Heroes and Patriots. I'm Mary Massey, along with co-host John SAKOWICZ. Our first guest was Ben Cohen. He is co-founder of Ben & Jerry's and the co-founder of Eisenhower Media Network, a group of retired military officers who support a less militaristic, multipolar world order. So,
and if you're interested in winning $1,000 a day, or I think it's $10,000. I'm sorry, 1,000 Dogecoins a day, or 10,000 Dogecoins a week. Just go to Ben Cohen's site here, Doge versus Blob. DOGEVSBLOB.org. If you have some concrete recommendations for saving defense spending in waste, fraud, and corruption, if you can be a whistleblower in your own way, go to his site. You stand a very good chance of winning. I've taken a look at some of the ideas here, and I've already submitted one or two of my own.
I need to do that.
Yeah.
So we are going to, just before we get into our second guest, we wanted to have Dorothy, who is our reliable engineer. She's with us every show. She's the membership coordinator, and she's promoting an event that's national. This is today, March 6, 2025. And Dorothy, I wondered if you might tell our listeners what the campaign is about, as well as membership is going on right now, membership drive. Would you do that for a few minutes before we bring Seth Donnelly on?
Yeah, so it is Protect My Public Media Day. And as you know, because you listen to KMUD, which is a community media, but also a public media, we are public radio and public television trusted sources of education, information, and connection. If you think that's worth protecting, you can go and sign the pledge. So it's protectmypublicmediaday.org. You can also find them on social media, hashtag Protect My Public Media. You sign the pledge, you can share your stories, why you love public media, and you could also contact your Congress people to tell them to continue protecting your public media. That's today. Do it at the same time that you are doing a donation to KMUD. That's two beautiful ways to protect your public media with a little bit of money and a little bit of activism.
And this is a nationwide effort.
Yeah, so it's been created by CBS and NPR, but we are in the same category of public media because a part of our founding come from the federal government, so we do need to be protected also. Hey, if we don't have the federal funding, we'll survive because we have amazing listeners who are just supporting us. But that's way easier if we get the federal money. So let's try to keep those.
Yeah, and I want to say that I listen to a lot of live media and on C-SPAN and on some of the live media feeds. I've been listening to Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana and the Government Oversight Committee literally undertake just a frontal assault, a frontal attack on public media. He uses his own state as an example. I don't know how many radio stations there are in Louisiana, but
he said about 300 or 400.
300 or 400, and then he says, but only 7 or 8 or NPR affiliates, and they're all liberal, and they're all this, that, and the other thing. They're all promoting all these radical agendas and all these woke agendas, blah blah blah. And so the attack is already underway.
Yeah.
And what's set to expire is the congressional continuing funding of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I believe that that resolution is set to expire on March 14th.
Right.
So we are mobilizing and resisting and advocating for public media. Again, we don't have political agendas. We're not allowed to. We begin each show with the disclaimer. We invite all sides in on the debate. On our next, with our next guest here, Seth Donnelly, we invited our congressmen, Mike Thompson and Jared Huffman, to debate Seth on this issue of unrestricted military funding for Israel as a way to control their war crimes in Palestine. They declined, but they were invited. But it goes to the point, it speaks to the point that we try to achieve balanced shows where all sides are included. Inclusivity, diversity, equity, and inclusivity starts right here at KMUD. It starts with our show. So that's why we leave the phone lines open to the public.
Right.
It's your radio station. It's your community radio station. It's why with our guests, we try to achieve balance.
707-923-3911 is the open lines for listeners to call. And we are now at 39 minutes past the hour going to bring Seth Donnelly back to the show. Welcome, Seth. How are you?
I'm good. Happy to be here. And it was just great. I caught the tail end of Ben. That was, wow. How cool is that? You guys could have Ben Cohen on. And always good to be with you all. At this point, it feels like, it's community, and I guess that's, and what you're saying about the community building that grassroots public radio plays is so vital. And it doesn't exist if we don't protect this. So I say that from the heart.
Wonder, Ben, just for people who may not regularly listen to the program and may not know what what you and your group and all of us are up to. Would you kind of just recap how you got formed as a group, what the process has been, and where you are today?
Yeah, what happened to the case?
Sure. So I've been fortunate to be on the program several times before, right. And you know, as John, you were saying about like balance, it would have been great if Jared Huffman or Mike Thompson would have come on for a debate. That would be something that we would have embraced. But beyond that, what we are Taxpayers Against Genocide. It's a grassroots movement that's spread across, starting in Northern California, now it's spreading across the U.S., of people who don't want their tax dollars to be used to fund genocide and war crimes. It's beyond a partisan issue. Really, most of us are neither political party. We're disillusioned with both. Right. What we all share in common is that we want our tax dollars to be used, as the Constitution establishes in Article 1, Section 8, truly for the quote-unquote general welfare. And we all stand opposed to the allocation of our tax dollars being used to, in this case, exterminate the people of Palestine under both parties. First most recently under Biden, and now the Trump administration continues to shower the Israeli regime with billions. And Trump just came out yesterday and threatened to basically wipe out Gaza. I don't know if folks followed that, but that's his latest tweet. So we recognize as ordinary folks truly at the grassroots level. Like, I'm a retired public high school teacher. We recognize that, and many of us are nurses, healthcare workers, veterans, Palestinian, Jewish, people of all backgrounds are in this movement. We recognize that our tax dollars are the source of the genocide in Gaza. That the Israeli Defense Force would not be able to pulverize Gaza if it weren't for U.S. weapons and U.S. aid, and that's all paid for by us. So this is directly making us complicit in genocide, and we take very seriously the principles established after World War II, the Nuremberg principles that are now enshrined in international law. That is, ordinary people have a duty to stop genocide. And so our approach has been to levy a class action lawsuit against this movement. Started in the 10 counties like Humboldt and Mendocino and Sonoma, and that are represented by both Mike Thompson in Congress as well as Jared Huffman. And so we filed a class action lawsuit last December 19th, against them for illegal use of our tax dollars to fund genocide, grounded in a strong reading of the Constitution as well as international law. And the class of taxpayers continue to grow. We hit 2,000 people, and on January 17th, we amended the lawsuit with our attorney to include the Greater Bay Area. And so it spread to 18 counties, and the defendants included not just Thompson and Huffman, but also Nancy Pelosi and all the congresspersons in this corridor of Northern California, the Bay Area, that have consistently supported the illegal allocation of our tax dollars for genocide. And so that's our case. On February 10th, the judge assigned to the case, Vince Shabria, dismissed our class action on the same grounds that previous class actions trying to stop genocide have been dismissed. And that is that our case presented a quote-unquote non-judiciable political question, meaning that we were asking the court to make policy for the other branches, and the court system does not, according to this judge, do that. It doesn't overstep its bounds. And so, again, that was the same argument that was used about months earlier to dismiss a case against Biden filed by Palestinian plaintiffs represented by the Center for Constitutional Rights, where they sued Biden for complicity in genocide, and the same court said, we're throwing this out because it presents the court with a political question. I'll stop there because there's a lot I could say on that and why we think that ruling is bogus and our next steps. But let me pause there, just in the interest of dialogue.
Yeah, what happens now?
Well, I wondered, is it dismissed with prejudice or prejudice?
No.
It is not.
It fortunately, the case, when he dismissed it, it was on the grounds that he backed away from using the word frivolous, because we had filed a response to an earlier order by the judge showing why we have cause. And so he backed away from calling the case frivolous, but then fell back onto this precedent. By the way, and I'll get to the next steps, but the precedent of the political question, or what they call the political doctrine, that the court system can't intervene, the case that set that precedent is called Corey versus Caterpillar. And it comes out of Rachel Corey, the Solidarity volunteer, the young woman who was murdered. She was from, I believe, from Washington State, from Seattle area. She was trying to protect a Palestinian home as a volunteer from being bulldozed. And the IDF soldier drove over her and killed her.
Washington State.
Well, she was in Israel as a volunteer. Came from Washington State.
Okay, I'm with you.
Rachel Corey, very well regarded. And then the IDF also killed some Palestinians trying to in the same time that they drove over Rachel. The same situation. So Rachel's family and some of the family members of the Palestinians who were murdered sued Caterpillar that had provided the bulldozers to the IDF, saying that Caterpillar should have known better than to provide bulldozers to an entity that was known for war crimes. The court ruled in that case that the families could not be awarded relief by Caterpillar because Congress had contracted and paid for the Caterpillars with our tax dollars. And therefore, the court doesn't make foreign policy for Congress or for the executive branch. So that was the origin. I think it was from 2007. That was the origin of this political, this precedent that they used against us most recently, and they also used against the case against Biden about a year ago. It's absurd at face value because the court all the time is intervening and deciding when the other branches pass laws or make policies that are unconstitutional. So, like the court just recently said that Trump can't cut off all the USAID, and so they're intervening there. They will intervene all the time, but they're being very selective when it comes to genocide and war crimes. That the court can't intervene. That's just the domain of Congress and the president, and therefore the court will be on the sidelines. What that means for people like us is that we're going to the international arena. So we're now continuing to mobilize across the country. Our goal is to get 10,000 taxpayers and more to sign on to a complaint that we're going to be filing with international bodies against our government for complicity in genocide.
What international bodies and what powers of enforcement do they have?
So the first body is the United Nations Human Rights Council, which is, by coincidence, every 4 years it conducts what's called a Universal Periodic Review, a UPR, of the U.S. government. And it happens to be doing that right now. And so it's collecting submissions by civil society organizations and other human rights advocates on April 7th. So our immediate report is calling out our congresspersons for complicity in genocide. Will be before them. They unfortunately do not have jurisdiction over the U.S., so they can't criminally prosecute U.S. officials, but they can, as a very well-regarded and well-known international mechanism, they can put U.S. officials on blast. And we're working with National Lawyers Guild attorneys on this, and as one of the attorneys says, it can generate a massive mobilization of shame on an international level. Of course, the U.S. has already been isolated internationally for its backing up of Israel, but this could be at a further level of calling out officials like Nancy Pelosi, Jared Huffman, etc., on an international plane. And it allows us to build our movement across borders, which, in our analysis, the only thing that will really stop the genocide, just like the only thing that's going to defend public radio, is a grassroots movement of the people across borders and across state lines. So that's the first body. The second body is the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, which we aim to file an official complaint against the U.S. government. Again, we're working with National Lawyers Guild attorneys for this, and that would be later this spring, possibly June, where we would file that in Washington, D.C. This is a body that has that manages human rights, addresses human rights violations throughout the entire Americas. And that body as well does not have criminal prosecution or jurisdiction over the United States because the U.S. has pulled out of the Inter-American Court, just like Trump is pulling the U.S. out of the United Nations Human Rights Council.
Right.
But that commission, though, can actually compel the U.S. to participate in a hearing. And if that's the case, we would really use that to really amplify publicity and awareness about the complicity of our officials.
You know, the cynic in me wants to say that true sociopaths and psychopaths know no shame. So if the strategy is to shame them, well, you know, it's not in their makeup, you know, in their emotional makeup to be shamed. I think that the you know, absent a U.S. court deciding against members of Congress who vote for unrestricted military aid for any party that commits war crime, I think the way to really affect change is to have contested primaries. You know, Nancy Pelosi now has a declared contender in her next primary.
Yeah.
This is unprecedented. You know, former Speaker of the House, someone who's been a member of Congress for the last 30 years, 30 plus years.
Something like that, yeah.
Finally has someone that's going to stand up and contest the primary. I'm hoping that the same thing happens here for Jared Huffman.
And Mike Thompson.
And Mike Thompson. You know, I'll speak about our district, California Congressional District 1. We have a gerrymandered district. As you know, it extends from San Rafael in Marin County all the way up to the Oregon border. That's the tiniest little slice of coastline. But I think registered Democrats outnumber registered Republicans by 2-1 or 3-1. So any Democrat running is pretty much going to get in. It's like a gerrymander.
Right.
So the only way to affect real change is to have a contested primary. Are you hearing from your grassroots supporters that we're going to start seeing more contested primaries for these gerrymandered districts in California?
Well, there's definitely an interest, right? And one of the plaintiffs, as you guys know, in our class action has been Jared Huffman, who did challenge. What am I saying? Norman Solomon was a plaintiff who did challenge. My apologies, Norman, who did challenge Jared Huffman and ran a very good campaign. In fact, I believe you invited them to a debate, and Huffman declined.
He did
on your program. But so yeah, the word is out and about people discussing this. These strategies synergize. So I understand that the comment that a psychopath may feel no shame. But at the end of the day, those in power do feel fear, congresspersons in power fear being voted out. And so the more and more the word gets out across the country and even on an international scale, that these aren't just law-abiding elected officials, but these are folks who've participated actively in genocide, that starts to draw on people across many different political perspectives in the United States, including independents, including young people who might vote for the first time ever. It becomes a red line, and that will only synergize with and strengthen challengers at the primary level, right?
I'm wondering if Huffman or Thompson, either one of them, has reacted, responded, put out a statement, or are they being quiet?
Yeah. Do you ever bump heads with these guys? Do you ever? Is there any response ever?
Yeah, that's my point.
Well, not directly to us, and unfortunately, because the judge dismissed our case, we didn't have that opportunity to, which is what so many people wanted. They wanted to actually have a hearing in court and make the case why, as a class, why this was both unconstitutional and why it created moral injury or damage to people right here at home.
Right.
Of course, the ultimate crime, of course, is the genocide of the Palestinian people, and so any damages that occur to people here, like Palestinian plaintiffs, one of our plaintiffs, he lost 211 family members. So any damages to folks here stems from the greatest crime of all, which is the genocide in Palestine. But no, they did it. They have not responded. Huffman issued a public statement, Thompson issued a public statement at one point saying that a court case would not improve the humanitarian situation. And, what that misses, of course, is that the only thing that's going to improve the humanitarian situation is for the United States government to stop weaponizing genocide.
Right. So they have to be voted out. That really, the ballot box sounds like the way to go.
I'm not stretching here. I think this is a really good idea, what I'm about to say. But have you, Seth Donnelly, ever thought about responding to Ben Cohen's site, Doge versus the Blob, and saying, look, my idea for saving some defense dollars and for preventing waste, fraud, and abuse would be to pull all the money Israel is getting for war crimes. Why don't you do that?
I think it's a beautiful idea, John. Yeah, I think many of us could do that, and I'm just learning about this today, since you guys had been on the program. But
you never know.
Certainly, that's all hands on deck, and I think that what we have to be clear on is that what Taxpayers Against Genocide is part of is building a mass grassroots movement across the United States. There's many different, we're a stream feeding into that river of that larger movement. There's other streams, but our particular goal is to organize taxpayers to say no, and some of us may choose a road of tax resistance. Some of us may choose to put them on blast in the international arena, and all of us, of course, would love to see them challenged at a primary level.
Right.
Okay. Final word. We're going to give you the final word.
We have 2 minutes.
You have 2 minutes to promote public media. So today is Protect My Public Media Day. We love having guests like you. We would have loved to have had Jared Huffman and on the show with you as well, and Norman Solomon, who's a friend of the show and a friend of the station. Why is protecting public media important, and how do you protect it where you live in? Was it Sebastopol?
We're down in Sonoma County area. We're in an area called the Springs, and absolutely no, that's easy. That's completely from my core. This is the lifeblood of any kind of movement. I've done a lot of solidarity work with people over the last 20 years with the popular movement in Haiti, and I used to take students regularly down to work with shoulder to shoulder with people in the movement in Haiti. And there's this very powerful pro-democracy movement in Haiti. Radio is the lifeblood of the movement in Haiti, and it is here too. If it weren't for programs like yours, we would have no platform, to communicate to the broader public. Where I live, I try to support. Of course, I support KPFA. I mean, their range extends into us. But certainly, I want to support you guys and the great work up there in Humboldt. And I know we're out of time. I just want to remind listeners that if you want to plug into our campaign to organize taxpayers and to sign up as part of this, we are trying to get 10,000 people to be part of this official complaint against the U.S. government and against our congresspersons. Please go to Class Action Against Genocide at proton.me. Very simple. We're also all over social media. If you just go to social media platforms and put Taxpayers Against Genocide, you'll get our hit right away.